I talked about 2025 and 2026 and like some of the things I'm looking forward to next year. I wanted to talk about some of the flops of 2025, things that I was excited for or interested in, or things in general that surprised me that were flops. They didn't hit. And I normally don't spend time digging on things that make me sad, but I figured, we should just cover some stuff that sucks that we could talk about. I think, to me, I don't know if you guys agree, this may be the biggest flop of 2025, and it hasn't even happened yet. Capcom announcing that Capcom Cup is pay-per-view. Do you guys have a bigger flop for fighting games for 2025? It's crazy because it's something that happened to the game that is literally the most popular. I don't know a single person that happened and then they're like, yeah, I'll scoop up, $40, like, I'm down to clown, like, let's get in there. The reason I think it's such a big flop is that every single person who saw that basically checked out completely from all competitive Street Fighter stuff, like, for the year. It had like a cascading effect even on viewership. I noticed like viewership for basically every fighting game streamer who like played Street Fighter or is interested in Street Fighter and all that kind of stuff, and like all of the competitive events for it. Immediately people were like, who cares? All of the stuff in the circuit is inconsequential because you can't watch the final. And it sucks too because so many of the other things in the year were really sick for Street Fighter. Like a lot of the tournaments were great. They did the SFLs live, which I think was really cool, but I think it really took the wind out of everybody's sails, and I think exacerbated the frustration people already had for like all the other parts of the games. It's a shame, especially because so much of the tour is run by not Capcom. The way Capcom Cup qualifiers work, their tours are like stapled onto fighting game grassroots events that already exist. So imagine like you run a World Warrior for Capcom for your region, and then after your person qualifies and you're like, all right, we get to watch them compete against the best players in the world, and then it's $40 to go watch your homie go play against everybody. Like, that feels so bad. It feels so wrong. It feels so incorrect for everything to be structured that way. I think, to me, that's the biggest one. Obviously, the buyout for EVO is a big fumble to me, and I think a lot of other people. I'm very sad about the sort of shrinking island of like grassroots fighting game spaces that exist for us in a lot of ways. That feeling to me is more frustrating than almost any other part of it. That is a thing that I expected and a lot of people expected. And I have a whole video talking about it and we all know about that. But the next flop I wanted to talk about, or like frustration, is patch cadence for a lot of these games. There's certainly a balance. I don't want to make it sound like games need to constantly update all the time. But I think one of the biggest flops to me in 2025 is waiting for the next patch or big update for a game and it being really far away and like not communicating when it's going to happen and people not knowing things. That is one thing that I think is like a big deal. People are really getting frustrated at not knowing when the updates are going to land. Tekken devs, I think a lot of people were expecting Armor King to be the patch that had like all these big changes and a lot of stuff in it. And I think for Street Fighter, it's kind of the same way where like last year we had like a December patch that was pretty big. And like people have been kind of like, are we gonna get like an update for Street Fighter for basically 6 months or more, right? If you're a competitor being like, my character will not change for 6 months, I'm going to learn this character that's messed up right now. Or being like, I don't know if I should invest in a new character or not because there might be a patch in a month or two and maybe I should learn something else. Like that feeling is very pervasive in fighting games because like you just don't know when the patches are going to be. They don't like tell you. And I think when there's so much money and so much importance in these tournaments and like where they land on the calendar year, conversations about like when you plan to do stuff is pretty important, and they just don't. Okay, comment here. I think a ton of modern fighting game players are spoiled as hell and have to learn how to adapt to a firm game state. Your point, I think, and my point are different. I would agree with you that fighting game players should just learn to deal with the game they're playing if they knew they were going to be stuck on that patch for a certain amount of time. The problem here is not the game's not going to change for 6 months, so this is the version you're going to be playing. It's the game is in a state and you don't know if it's going to change next month or in 6 months or in 8 months or in a year. Everybody was basically like, is Street Fighter going to patch in December or not? And nobody knew. And then they did patch and the patch was small. If they had communicated months ahead of time, hey guys, we're going to have a really small patch in December, it's going to change mostly the new characters, but otherwise the game will be in this state until Capcom Cup. That would be perfect because then people know the game's going to be this way until this time. I can lock in and play this. And same thing for other games. Like imagine if you're like, I think in this version of the game, this is the best character in the game, but I need like 4 months of playing this character before I'm like really comfortable. And you don't know if the game's going to get patched in 4 months or not and your character's going to change. Isn't that a scary commitment? It's not about like players being able to adapt to patches or accept that there's not updates and stuff. I think it's fine if they're like, hey, this is the version of the game. We're going to look to update maybe in 6 to 8 months with a big patch, but like this is kind of where the balance is going to be for a while. That'd be fine. You know, some people would be upset, sure, but then at least you know. And I think a lot of games have sort of struggled with communicating how often and when they're gonna patch. Like 2XK was the opposite. Unconquerable's like just in a random place on the riot office, like, what's up? This is what we're thinking. This is what we're gonna do in the future. We're gonna patch this off. They've been yapping constantly. And some people may say they're patching too much or like too little or whatever. But to me, the cadence wherever they land on patching is one thing, but like I am just very pleased that they're telling people, yo, here's what's going on. Other flops of the year, should we talk about Net Impact, guys? I don't even think it's Net Impact's fault because I don't think that game was gonna have that big of a splash, you know? It's like when like a 90-pound kid tries to do a belly flop, you're like, you did your best, but like, I think the expectations of how much waves you were gonna make are pretty low with that price and the way it looked and how people felt about it before it was coming out. But the netcode not being great on launch, I watch everybody just suffering. That's the part that makes me sad. In the year 2025, heading into 2026, releasing with bad netcode is just tough because there's so many good games out that have good netcode. In fact, it's the norm for fighting games to have good netcode now. The other thing, I was gonna talk about this a little bit. I got asked this by someone, a fighting game player who was at our 4th of July party, asked me if City of the Wolves flopped. Like, it seems like it's not that popular. They were like, I seen the Steam chart post. To me, I think that game performed exactly like how that game was probably supposed to perform. No, it's not a big IP. They spent too much money on marketing and stuff. I think that was a flop, and I think the guest characters did not land at all. They are massive flops to be both of them. I still don't buy into the DJ Man's hype. Like, listen, literally imagine if you were so rich that you could just put your favorite musician in a game because you're like, fuck it. You're like, I like Grandmaster Flash, so I'm putting him in Tekken. Okay, that would be cooler than what we got. But like, you get what I'm saying. Flylo and GGST, you know, we're on to something here. It's like his personal jester that he just put in the game, kind of, right? Like, that's like the vibe. That being said, just think about it outside of whatever your impression is of the guest characters and all this other stuff. The cadence of releases for characters is insane. The game has tons of money on it, and they're supporting a lot of their older titles, which is really cool. The biggest ball that they dropped in that game, to me, quality of life stuff, which a lot of fighting games have problems with. I think 2XKO is missing a ton of quality of life stuff as an example, and patches. That's the biggest thing for that game. Largely, the top tier characters have been the same problems for like most of the game's lifespan. You don't have to kill them just to kill them, but like, I do think only seeing 4 characters in tournament for 8 months or whatever really hurt a lot of people. But I think that game performed about what I expected. The big thing about that game is like the way people talked about that game and like how it was like this fighting game savior and so sick and awesome and good. I think muddied a lot of the legitimate complaints people would have had about other random things about the game. Like, personally, there's things about the gameplay of the game I dislike, but I didn't even want to start a conversation about it because I'm not a hater. It's a taste thing more than anything else. But I wanted to, because people were like, if you don't like this game, you don't like good fighting games. And I'm just like, my hands were shaking. I was like, don't make me do it. Don't make me start flaming this game. Yeah, I was about to ult. I'll probably give it another spin when season 2 comes out and there's a balance patch. But season 2 might be dope. And it's a 1v1 game and a market of versus game switch. What other flops are I going to talk about in 2025? 2XKO not releasing on console. I get the sense, given the release of this, it was either get the game out on PC in 2025 or get the game out in totality in 2026, which is a fumble either way. Yeah, the launch roster. I'm guessing, I mean, this is a 2026 fumble potentially. I'm getting the vibe that Tokon's also not going to have a big launch roster. Strive 3v3, yeah, I don't know who that was all for either. Not going to lie. I don't know what that was all about. We could have just not had that shit and had 2.0 already, I feel like. The SFL stream rules, yeah, that's also whack. General fighting game discourse this year. You know, everywhere I look, everybody is more upset than I have ever remembered about everything. Yeah, fuck AI. That's also true for flops of 2025. I just want to buy RAM. Dude, at first it was Bitcoin mining and now it's fucking AI. Like, it's over for us, man. Like, we're just doomed. Every hobby on the planet getting purchased up by some mega corporation. We got any other flops? Not to be hateful. I try to keep my flops not that hateful. I actually think there wasn't a lot of good music this year. Like, not that there wasn't a lot, but like, it was just okay. There was some cool stuff, but not a ton of dope stuff. There was a Clips album. Yeah. You guys all say Clips out. I knew you're gonna say it. You can't have one album carrying a whole year. Like, and not to say it's the only album, but there wasn't a lot of crazy big hits that I thought was like, oh, I thought it was okay. It was a whack year for pop. There was not a lot of good pop stuff. Taylor Swift has been washed. Actually, I don't even think she's washed, because to me, she would have had to been sick to be washed. I'll say it. She's had some singles and some cool stuff. I'm like, oh, okay, but I never listened to an album front to back and been like, damn, this is beast. I think she should put out an album that's literally just all about football. Imagine Taylor gets on the track and she said, you said hut hut, I said what? Put out a diss track about the fucking deflated Patriots football. You know what I'm saying? Yeah, if you hold up, up or writing is this fire?
Listen.
I'm still damaged by you calling E33's music orchestral slop. I think I'm right. I'll say it. I think the music is cool, but they're literally just mashing on orchestral music. Like, you know, polyphia. E33 sounds like orchestral polyphia to me. I'm not trying to flame. I'm just telling you that's how I feel. They're mashing on that violin, bro. Like,